Eat like a dog, my son said, laughing, while his wife placed my dinner plate on the floor, right next to the dog's bowl. Those 4 words shattered me in a way I never thought possible. My own son. The boy I raised, loved, and sacrificed everything for, humiliated me in front of everyone during what was supposed to be a joyful holiday dinner. Tell me, would you have done what I did next? Because even now, I can't believe how far things went after that night. It still haunts me, and sometimes I wonder if I went too far, or if I finally stood up for myself after years of being taken for granted. It all began a few months before that dinner, when my son and his wife invited me to spend the holidays with them. I was honestly excited. I'd been living alone ever since my husband passed away 5 years ago. The holidays were always his favorite time of year, and since he died, I hadn't celebrated properly. When my son called, saying, "Mom, why don't you come spend Christmas with us this year?" I felt a spark of warmth I hadn't felt in ages. I packed my bags, baked my husband's favorite cookies, and headed over. I even bought a few thoughtful gifts for them. Nothing fancy, just personal things I knew they'd appreciate. When I arrived, though, I immediately sensed something was off. My daughter-in-law barely looked at me. Her tone was polite but cold. My son tried to act normal, but I could tell he was uncomfortable too. The house was spotless, the decorations perfect, almost too perfect. It felt less like a home and more like a showroom. I brushed it off at first, thinking maybe I was just overthinking. But as the days went on, little things started piling up. The first thing that bothered me was how my daughter-in-law would correct me in front of everyone. If I tried to help in the kitchen, she'd say things like, "No, no, you're doing it wrong, I'll handle it." If I sat in a certain chair, she'd say, "Oh, that's my spot." I kept quiet, reminding myself that I was a guest in their home. I didn't want to start any drama. My son mostly stayed silent through it all, which hurt even more. The man I raised to be respectful and kind just stood there, pretending not to notice how his wife treated me. Still, I held on to hope that things would get better. I kept smiling, cooking, helping with chores, and trying to connect. Then came the holiday dinner, the night everything changed. They had invited a few of her friends and some neighbors. I didn't mind. I actually thought it was sweet that they wanted to host such a big gathering. I even helped prepare the roast, made the mashed potatoes from scratch, and set the table. Or at least I tried to. When I went to put the silverware down, my daughter-in-law stopped me again, sighing dramatically. "Oh, you don't have to do that, it's fine," she said, taking the utensils from my hands. I could feel her annoyance like a slap across the face. During dinner, everyone laughed and chatted while I sat quietly at the corner of the table, just listening. I told myself not to take it personally, but then, when it was time to serve the food, something strange happened. My daughter-in-law started handing out plates, one for each guest, then my son, then herself. When she got to me, she hesitated for a moment. "Oh," she said, smirking slightly, "there's not enough room at the table." I looked around. There was clearly an empty chair. "That's okay," I said softly, trying to avoid conflict, but before I could stand up to pull the chair closer, she placed my plate on the floor. On the floor, right next to their dog's bowl. "You can eat here," she said. At first, I thought it was some kind of twisted joke. I stared at the plate, then at her, then at my son, waiting for him to say something. Anything. He looked right at me, his face blank, then smirked. "Come on, Mom," he said, chuckling. "Just eat like a dog." Everyone laughed, the guests, her friends, even my son's co-workers who barely knew me. They all laughed. The room spun, and my heart pounded in my chest. I felt the heat rising to my face. I couldn't even speak. I just stood there, staring at the plate on the floor, trying to process what had just happened. In that moment, I wasn't a mother or a guest. I was a joke. A burden, a nobody. I excused myself quietly, walked into the guest room and closed the door. I sat on the bed, shaking, tears rolling down my face. I thought of all the times I had worked double shifts to feed him, all the nights I stayed up when he was sick, all the sacrifices I made to put him through college. For what? So he could stand there and let his wife humiliate me like that. I wanted to leave right then and there, but it was late and the snow outside was falling heavily. I could hear them laughing downstairs as I packed my things, that laughter. It felt like knives twisting in my chest. I spent the night awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment that had led to this. By morning, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to make sure they never treated me that way again. Before I tell you what I did next, I want you to pause and tell me what you would have done in my shoes. If your own child and their spouse humiliated you like that, would you have walked away quietly, or would you have made them regret it? Because what I did next changed everything. The next morning I pretended nothing was wrong. I smiled, thanked them for the lovely dinner, and even offered to clean up before I left. My daughter-in-law raised an eyebrow, probably surprised that I wasn't storming out. "That's okay," she said dismissively. "We've got it." I nodded, took my coat, and said goodbye. My son gave me a half-hearted hug and said, "See you soon, Mom." That was the last time he saw me as the person he thought he could walk over. When I got home, I started planning. You see, what they didn't know was that the house they were living in, the one they had so proudly remodeled and hosted dinners in, wasn't technically theirs. It was mine. I had bought that house years ago when my son first got married. I wanted them to have a good start, so I let them live their rent, free under one condition. They would eventually take over the mortgage once they could afford it. But guess what? They never did. Not once did they pay a single cent toward the property taxes, repairs, or anything else. Everything, down to the utilities, was in my name, and that meant legally it was still my house. They thought they could humiliate me in my own property. They had no idea what was coming. I called my lawyer the very next day. I explained everything, and within a few weeks we began the process of transferring ownership back into my hands exclusively. My son and his wife had signed temporary occupancy documents years ago, which meant I could legally revoke their right to live there. I gave them 30 days' notice. When the letter arrived, my phone exploded with calls. First my son, then his wife, both demanding to know what was going on. "Mom, what the hell is this?" he shouted. "You're kicking us out. You can't do that." "Actually," I said calmly, "I can. You seem to have forgotten who owns that house." There was silence on the other end. Then he said, "You're being ridiculous. You're punishing us over a joke." "A joke?" I snapped. "You humiliated me. You made me feel like less than a human being in front of strangers, and now you're going to learn what it feels like to be put in your place." His wife got on the phone, yelling something about how I was ruining their lives, but I hung up. For once, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Over the next few weeks, they tried everything to make me change my mind. They sent texts, emails, even got my sister to call and plead with me. But I didn't budge. The day they moved out, I stood on the porch, watching them load their boxes into a moving truck. My son wouldn't even look at me. His wife glared at me the whole time, muttering under her breath, When the truck drove away, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. I didn't want to destroy my relationship with my son, but I also knew I couldn't keep letting him and his wife treat me like dirt. I went inside, looked around at the empty house, and for the first time in years I felt peace. But karma, as they say, works in mysterious ways. About 2 months later, I got a call from my son. His voice was shaky, defeated. "Mom," he said softly, "can we talk?" I hesitated, but agreed to meet him at a cafe nearby. When I walked in, he looked nothing like the smug man from that dinner. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes tired. He told me that after they moved out, things started falling apart. His wife had lost her job, they couldn't keep up with rent, and the constant stress had taken a toll on their marriage. She left me, he admitted quietly, said she couldn't deal with it anymore. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt sad. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said softly. He nodded, looking down. "I know I messed up, Mom. What we did that night. It was cruel. I don't know what got into me. I just wanted to make her happy, and I went along with it. I didn't realize how much I'd hurt you until after you were gone." I took a deep breath. "You didn't just hurt me, son. You broke something inside me, something I'm not sure will ever heal." He wiped his eyes, and for the first time in years, I saw my little boy again. The one who used to hug me after a bad dream, the one who promised he'd always protect me. I reached across the table and took his hand. "I forgive you," I said, my voice trembling, "but you have to understand respect is not optional. Not for anyone, not even family." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. We talked for hours that day. It didn't erase the pain, but it was a start. Over time, we began rebuilding our relationship, slowly but genuinely. He started visiting again, this time with humility and gratitude. He helped me with repairs around the house, brought groceries, and made sure I never felt alone. As for his ex-wife, I never heard from her again, and honestly, I preferred it that way. Sometimes, when I sit by the fireplace on cold nights, I think back to that dinner. I can still hear the laughter, the clinking of glasses, and my son's voice saying, "Eat like a dog." But I also remember the moment I stood up for myself, the moment I stopped letting people treat me as less than I am. Maybe that's what life is about, learning when to walk away, even from the people you love. If you've ever been disrespected by someone close to you, I hope my story reminds you that you don't have to tolerate it. Love doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. Love also means respecting yourself enough to say, "Enough." So, what do you think? Was I too harsh for kicking them out? Or was it the only way to make them understand what they'd done? Let me know in the comments. Like this video if you think I did the right thing. Subscribe for more stories like this, and share your thoughts below. I'd really love to hear what you would have done. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you all in the next story.